Welcome to the Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth podcast with Nathan Barkocy, where we are passionate about creating time freedom, impact, and purpose through real assets and real relationships. Because true wealth isn't solely what you have, it's what you become. So I am Nathan, and I'm here today with Ronnie from Alpine Gold Exchange. Ronnie, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ronnie, tell us a little bit more about Alpine Gold Exchange.
Yeah, so Alpine Gold Exchange is in simple terms, we are a precious metals exchange, right? So that means you can bring in cash, leave with metals, but really our focus is on the digital side of things and enabling people to use those precious metals to use, right? They can go and spend it as currency. You can go into local vendors or shops and actually spend your precious metals investment. And the two biggest things that we've seen here today or the last couple of days, but also just generally in the market, is that people don't know that you can use gold as money. They see it kind of as like a brick or a store of value that you tuck away and hopefully it increases in value. They don't know that you can actually use it. And a lot of people, Warren Buffett even said that you can't earn on gold, whereas, we partner with companies all of the time that will pay yields. And so your gold can actually earn a dividend that's paid in gold. And so basically our two main principles are that is to allow you to earn on gold and spend in gold. So we enable that through our technology, trying to help people understand that it is a thing you can do today in modern society. This isn't something for your grandparents. It's something that you can use on an app today.
That's so interesting. Okay, so this is something that I'm really interested to dive into a little bit deeper, because obviously gold is a currency that is less. I mean, you don't store it up the same as you do other currency, right?
Sure.
And it's not a currency anymore, right? When Nixon took America off the gold standard, we've seen that. The dollar has decreased in value continuously.
Yeah.
And the gold standard is always held, but there's a lot of skepticism about the gold, and obviously Peter Schiff dives in very deeply into this. And I have a podcast with Peter Schiff later on today, so I'm interested to hear, how we're able to utilize gold to build the wealth. And really also include that into the liquidity and currency. You know?
Absolutely. Gold being a true form of money, I think it's something that Americans have lost sight of, specifically the younger generations, right? Like I'm a millennial, Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever. These new younger people have been raised with no understanding of alternative currencies. Really, it's just been the fiat dollar is the one and all be all. But in our lifetimes, we've seen the depreciation of that asset dramatically. I remember I'm from Southern California, so Del Taco is like a staple for us, right? Yeah. And growing up, we lived on those 39-cent tacos. Those same tacos are $2 now, right? And I'm not that old, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen that happen, and it's hurt. And I think Americans every day, specifically young ones, are looking naturally, like intrinsically within our core. We want to find safety, and gold has always been an asset that you can typically rely on over a long period of time. We're seeing a lot of people float into Bitcoin, which I love. I'm a crypto guy as well. The only downside to that is just the extreme volatility. And so when it comes to personal wealth, safety is always a great place to be, and trying to make sure that however safe that asset is, liquidity is killer, right? You have to have it.
Yeah.
I owned a home, and we put a lot of money into the home, and we had some financial difficulties, and I'm just like, I've got all this money in my house, I can't do anything with it.
Right. It's a liability as opposed to an asset, right?
Totally.
Which is why I've pursued real estate as an asset. So I own a lot of multifamily and real estate that we lease out. And so cash flowing real estate is an asset.
Absolutely.
However, if it's not cash flowing for you, it's a liability, and capital is locked up.
And then you feel that. Yeah, you feel that pain. You feel kind of trapped.
Right, yeah. So this is interesting. So you mentioned crypto, and I really want to dive into this one too, okay? You brought it up, all right? I wasn't even going to bring it up, but you did. So this is something, obviously, Peter Schiff is a big anti-crypto guy.
Totally.
And there's a lot of anti-crypto guys here at the New Orleans Investment Conference. But what's really interesting is we had a great podcast yesterday, really diving deep into crypto and into how we're moving forward, right, and some stable coin. And so I want to get your opinion of this all. And yes, you mentioned the volatility of the crypto, but is crypto the new gold?
I don't think it is yet, right? I think the technology is incredible. I love the idea of being able to send payment or value cross borders, where things are on a blockchain and there's this ledger that's public and you can kind of understand what's going on. You can check credibility of the person you're buying from or doing business with. I believe truly in the technology. But as far as a long-term store of value from a wealth preservation mentality, right? That's security. I don't think anyone who holds Bitcoin over the past week even has felt safe, right? I hold Bitcoin and I'm watching every month or so, I check in. And if your asset falls 25% in a couple of weeks, like that doesn't feel like a safe place to keep your wealth. Additionally, recently I sent some just between exchanges to myself, some Bitcoin from one exchange to another. It cost me over $100 and it took about an hour, right? I sent 2 little transactions and waiting for block, today we're spoiled. That's pretty fast, all things considered, right? Like with a wire transfer or ACH payments, it can take days. So comparatively speaking, it is fast, but the point of crypto should be fast, efficient, cheap payments. If it's Bitcoin, we're not there yet, right? There's other places, other assets, coins, or chains you can do that. But with gold, luckily you can still move that physical thing. So I can still give you an ounce of gold. There's even products called gold backs that are in tiny amounts where I can pay you $4 right now in gold. And that's something that is a private transaction. There is no, blockchain or nothing tracking that. And so privacy, tangibility and security over time, I don't think that crypto's there yet.
Yeah. And I think this is a whole podcast that you and I could get into, and I'd love to do that in the future, like just a podcast on crypto and that comparison to gold. But your expertise is on the gold, right? Yeah. And kind of the currency of gold, right? Bringing that back in.
Totally.
So I would love to hear your expertise on how we're able to use gold for exchange, right?
Yeah, so, the U.S. government mints they mint money, right? They mint gold and silver legal tender. And so that's our main focus, right? So we want to enable people to take what the government has already deemed money and then use it every day. And so we only sell really 3 products, and that's U.S. minted silver, U.S. minted gold, and then gold backs as well. And so, federally, because the government has recognized that as a form of money, they prove or they deem those things able to be spent as money because it is dollars. And so, if you are trying to send bullion to another person, you can barter, but many states have barter taxes and additional fees on top of those kinds of that relationship. However, when using U.S. minted coinage, there's nothing additional on top. And many states are starting to accept and adopt precious metal legislation as well, which further supports this federalized monetary system. And so we use trust law to allow us to privately exchange value between parties. And our software enables that to happen instantly, privately, in a way that doesn't get reported to any federal agency. It's a full-on private system where you can re-tile your bathroom or pay for coffee. It acts kind of like Venmo.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. So yeah, what are the tax advantages of utilizing gold as a currency as opposed to money?
That's a great question. So, capital gains tax is kind of the biggest one, right? Most people in the space, like in the precious metals area right now, when they talk about spending it, the thing that they're lacking is that capital gains tax aspect, right? If I were to pay you in bullion or in another form, even crypto today, like if I were to use I actually have a Coinbase card. Okay, so if I spend Bitcoin, I actually have to render capital gains tax every time I hit that transaction button. Every time I spend that and convert it into dollars, capital gains happens. But according to the federal government, if you're spending gold or silver coins, if you're spending that, there is no capital gains because it is the value. So I'm not converting it into dollars because it already is a dollar. So it's a gold or silver dollar, so there's nothing extra. So you're saving 28% every time you spend. Yeah. So it's a big difference that helps Americans a lot.
And you guys have been able to make this accessible for the general public.
Yep. Okay. So our accounts are free on alpinegold.com. You can sign up. A little bit of information, and really it's only for account security, right? First name, last name, email, address, phone number, that kind of thing. But there's no social security number or kind of invasive information that we're asking. Once that's validated, then you can start funding your account that day. You can use a card or ACH or even cash at one of our branches. And so we've been expanding a lot over the past 4 years, not because we've wanted to, but because people have been demanding it, right? People want they want privacy, and they want to be able to control their wealth.
Really interesting. I had a long podcast with Eric, who's the owner of they really teach about privacy in regard to our phones, right? Yeah. So everything around us right now is not private, right?
Totally.
Because our phones know us better than we do. We know ourselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that means that, of course, the government would know us and all this stuff. And so what we're doing here at Main Street Media Network, right, is we're trying to get people off of that passive reliance on Wall Street, you know, off of that just dependence of, you know, the programs that are set up for us, and more into active ownership of Main Street, right? And so this is really interesting. That aligns perfectly with what we're doing here. That aligns perfectly with this movement that we're starting.
100%.
Because you actually own your wealth through something like gold or silver, right?
100%. You're in control of it. You know, tangible liberty is something that should be. I'm being let down by my generation and younger generations who are losing sight of self-responsibility. And I think that's something that it directly translates to liberty for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities. If we can control, exactly like you're saying, control our own Wall Street, understand what we're doing when we're giving our information away, right? And transacting privately, transacting locally, I think that's kind of the cure for a lot of this divisiveness in the country that we're seeing, is communicating, transacting, supporting your local people in a tangible way. I think physically, if we can connect using money, using any terms of exchange where we're communicating and it's something that we can hold on to, then I think that connection, that divide can be fixed. So, you know, big time I'm a believer in what you guys are doing. I think, you know, we're very aligned, and Eric, the Meters, we're great friends with them. We've done a few shows with them as well. And so, you know, we're just, at the end of the day, you know, we're about liberty. As a company, we love it, and we think it's a God-given right, and we want to enable all Americans, and honestly, anyone around the world who has that same belief system, to be able to take control.
Absolutely. And where do you think, I mean, personally, you can maybe speak on this, but where do you think the liberty has gone for our country right now?
It's a great question. I think, you know, where do I think it's gone? I think people are turning it into more of an esoteric ideological battle, where the thoughts, my thoughts are different than yours, and so you're different than me. When at the end of the day, we're Americans, right? Even if you're not born here, but you're here, you're American. Because, you know, I've lived abroad. I lived in Italy for 2 years, and I loved it. Beautiful country. But coming back to America, there's an American optimism that permeates, I think, everybody. And I think that optimism is somehow being flattened and somehow being like pushed down. You know, I don't know who to blame, but I think, you know, all of us can take another step in the direction of, you know, of that optimism. A step in the right direction for that optimism is just exactly what you guys are doing, is understanding, taking control of your wealth, understanding Wall Street, understanding your personal finances, your privacy, understanding yourself is very important. And I think, you know, as we take those steps, it will bridge gaps, right? If I'm buying coffee from a coffee shop, and they might think totally differently than me, but I'm using gold to do it privately, they're able to preserve their wealth better, right? Every day the dollar's dying, and gold has been an asset that preserves wealth over long periods of time very consistently. The dollar is not doing great, and conversely, the gold ends up looking like it's doing very well, and that's something where I'm actually helping them, right? And they might not see it right now, but in a month they might say, hey, this is actually worth 3% more today. Bad news for the dollar, right? But I'm helping that community. And so, you know, I think the more that we do that, the more we transact on a local basis, the more we'll kind of understand each other a little better.
Well, and that really takes ownership. That was something that we just mentioned, right? And I think that really takes a lot of ownership into this wealth and into the currency. And so I'm curious, it takes a lot of studying, due diligence, and being present with networks like this. What would be your number one recommendation to someone who it just thinks that it's absurd to start transacting in gold? Because maybe they're obviously a younger generation. They've never seen gold transact because all they've seen is dollars, right?
It feels a little archaic. You know, I think my real introduction into like the financial kind of space was Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. That book changed my life. I was in high school, was reading that. And I think education, just simple education, and the desire to be educated, not relying on other people to educate you, consuming media from different places. I read a book, right? I wasn't on a podcast. I didn't hear a podcast. I didn't hear anything. I read a book from a guy I'd never heard of before. Someone just, hey, there's a book. It's about real estate. You should check it out. And so I trusted a friend, and I was able to then consume that. Today, it's more podcasts. It's more TikTok, social media. And I think what you guys are doing is going to be critical. Like, I'm sure you understand, but I don't think many people understand how important it really is to get in front of more people from an education perspective, showing people different perspectives, different worldviews. And that's really, that's the thing that, it's funny. Our main audience, the people who quickly or the quickest understand what we're doing, are like over 50 years old.
Right.
It takes a lot of education to show, hey, this is kind of like Cash App, or this is kind of like a Venmo, and that's how I can show people you're just transacting between two parties on a third-party system, right? At the end of the day, within Venmo, where do you put your money? You just put it back in your bank, right? So, who is your bank? How are they banking? What are your terms, right? So understanding your own stuff, but yeah, communicating through social media, through modern terms, from an education approach is absolutely critical.
Education would be number one then, and that's just, I've said this multiple times at this conference, right? That we need some form of educational platform where the youth are able to become productive, right? And be productive in our economy, right?
Yeah.
Really move forward with productive economy and have such an abundance of productivity that they're able to create work for other people. They're able to create wealth. They're able to create, hold real assets, right? Because real assets create true wealth. And so I think that's incredible. And it's up to people like us to be able to make that happen, right?
Yeah,
so we're taking next steps, and I appreciate you doing this.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
As we are wrapping up this podcast, I appreciate your time today. What is one tip that you would leave out there for people who are interested in moving forward with any questions about gold or even just gaining an understanding of this level of wealth?
I think, these systems that are starting to lose trust with the banking systems, the financial systems, the Federal Reserve, even government as a whole, people are kind of trusting less and less what they say to do. But I will say that, diversification is incredibly important. I have stocks, I have crypto, and I have precious metals in my portfolio. I think it's important to understand, what's your risk tolerance level, where do you want to be in 10 years, and then position yourself now to be there. And so just, understanding your finances is incredibly important. So I would just say, tips are, look at alternative assets, look into what a debasement trade is and what it means. After those things, then, follow your heart, follow your mind, whatever you feel is the right thing for you, then do it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Ronnie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Nathan.
And for any of you that are interested in finding out more about the Alpine Gold Exchange, feel free to email us at exchange@mainstreetmedianetwork.com, and we'll be able to send them all of your information, and we'll give them references to what you guys are doing.
Perfect.
And you can collect more information that way. So
Great.
I appreciate you joining me today,
Thanks,
Ronnie.
Nathan, man.
Thank you.
Great talk.
And
Great
this is Nathan with the Old Wealth, New Wealth, True Wealth podcast. And remember, tomorrow is never promised, so go make the most of today.